Welcome back to another episode of Unscripted Exchanges. Super excited to be here, Hayden. How about you?
I'm having a blast, man. Today's a big day. I think this might be episode number 80.
Dude, they're getting up there. The lucky 80. The
I
lucky
know.
80. And I think we've got one of the coolest guests. High energy, super awesome story. We've got Chris Ratterman from Shady Rays on here today. Chris is an entrepreneur. He's the CEO and founder of Shady Rays sunglasses and eyewear. They are a lifestyle eyewear brand that really fills a need in my life. I mean, personally, so I'm gonna just go on a side tangent for a minute. I'm not a person that loves brands. I'm very much a brand agnostic person, meaning I really don't care if it fills a need. But I'm also that person that if I find something I do love, like I'm dedicated to it. And these sunglasses are easily my favorite pair of sunglasses I've ever owned. And I've had Costas, I've had Oakleys, I've had all that stuff. So just a little side note, I had to go on a tangent, but we've got Chris here. He's going to tell his story. He's going to tell us about why he founded Shady Rays, what they've got going on. It's going to be an electric episode. So, Chris, thanks for coming on. Super excited to have you. Just had to throw in my love for the brand here when we started off.
Always appreciate it. Really excited to be here with you guys.
So, Chris, let's just dive on in. I mean, Cole and I have done a little bit of research. Cole obviously knows a little bit more, given the fact that he does work with you in his day-to-day job. But anyhow, why don't you kind of just give us a little bit of background in terms of how you got to where you are, your kind of journey, some of the highs and the lows, things like that.
So I founded Shady Rays in late 2012. So we're a little bit over a decade old, which is kind of crazy to think about at this point. I was working in corporate brand management at the time. I was actually in a very different industry around here in Kentucky. One of the big industries is bourbon. I was working in bourbon marketing, but I was doing a lot of lifestyle marketing, brand partnerships, and it was the early days of Instagram influencers,
Mm-hmm.
Facebook advertising, fan pages, these kind of things. Always had the entrepreneurial bug and always wanted to try new ideas and build something. I was the person that was always pitching one crazy idea after the other to friends and such. But when I came up with the idea for Shady Rays, I was super passionate about it. Came up with the name. Shockingly, the .com is available. The trademark is available. The Instagram handle is available. Those are all the stuff, all the things you check first, right? You go to
Right.
GoDaddy.com, is a .com now. Go to USPTO.gov, is
Yep.
someone else using it. You Google it, like almost always someone is using it. That's just the reality of this
Right,
thing.
then you have to tweak
And
it, right? You're like, oh, I have to change this or spell it differently, and you're like, oh my, you're like, hold on a second, it's all available. You're like, this has got to be a sign, right?
well, I was like, yeah, right. There's got to be a reason. There's got to be a reason. So, but like sunglasses, always been super passionate about sunglasses. As a kid, wanted Oakleys. My parents wouldn't buy me Oakleys, so I never had a pair of those. And it was just fascinating to me that people would, which is nothing against any other brand, but you would take this $300 piece of plastic and you put it on your face, and then you go out and like water ski, get in the mud, get in the dirt, get in the sand, and high stakes, high stakes. So I developed the name Shady Rays, thought about the product category, love the product category. I was trying to figure out what is the differentiator in sunglasses that would be compelling. And the way I did that is I went to search.twitter.com and I was looking up negative terms, negative commentation, cuss words related to sunglasses, and
Okay.
found hundreds of people a day, without exaggeration, hundreds of people that were upset they were losing and breaking sunglasses, usually the high price sunglasses.
Okay.
So that's where our lost and broken came from. Quality with the lost and broken, and of course, the social mission and purpose driven aspect of our company is a really important part too. And from there, we were off to the races. Really, it was a side bedroom project. I put in a little bit of my own money, all that I had, didn't have that much. We didn't raise funds, but found a manufacturer, an accountant, a lawyer, a graphic designer, all kind of on the side contractors, and pieced it together. Got some product that initially was stored under the bed in a big tote, and I wasn't worried actually how to ship it. I was worried about like, can we actually figure out how to sell this stuff? And just tested a lot of different things. So throughout the whole journey, and I'll say this, and I'll stop for a minute, but there wasn't really a silver bullet moment. It was always 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, vice versa, trying all of these different angles, of which we did through digital to mall kiosks to, you know, kids on college campuses selling, like all of these things to both learn about the brand, see what makes sense, optimize it, and figure out how we can grow it. So it really was kind of this real time experiment.
Mm-hmm.
Shady Rays, when it first went into the world, looked very different than it was today. So people always ask me, like, they look at shadyrays.com now, like, how did you think of this? Like, I did not think of this actually. I thought of something that's sort of in this ballpark,
Right.
and I put it out there, and then we changed it and we tinkered with it, and we chipped away at it, and it comes to what it is today. So
That's awesome. I mean, it sounds like a lot of resiliency along the way. I mean, it sounds like you also pivoted, trying to fine tune what made the most sense. And I think that's just a successful recipe in the long run. I mean, no matter what industry you're in, you got to always be willing to adapt and try to figure it out.
Well, one of the things, Chris, that I love about that story and kind of the tone you had throughout it is the fact that you're talking about like, hey, I never had it all figured out. All I knew is that I had to move forward. Like we'd make a step, we get a great feedback for this, but then two other things went wrong, so we'd have to change and pivot and move. And I feel like, and I've learned this. I mean, you probably know me well enough just from working with me in your retail settings. Lindsay and Stephanie, I told them I'd give them a shout out, are phenomenal to work with. They're awesome.
they are.
But I mean, your team is very much like let's go, let's go, let's go, and you've probably seen that in me is let's try it, let's see if it works, let's see if we like it, let's keep moving. And what I love about that story and kind of just your energy in explaining that is that you didn't know what was going to be way out in front. A lot of people say, "Oh, well, like I have to perfect everything." A lot of entrepreneurs and even people in corporate jobs or any job they're at, like it's got to be perfect, right? So I'm going to put all this effort into making it what I think is perfect without getting feedback, without testing anything, without actually seeing what the real world's going to think of it, you know? And that slows people down, right? That's a dream crusher. Because if it never gets to this unrealistic expectation you have cooked up in your mind, then you get to the point where people are like, well, why'd you quit on it? Well, it just didn't work out, right? Or the market wasn't right, or a lot of that. And I'm a big believer in like, you don't know what it's going to end up like, so you just got to take the little wins as you go. And I love, love, love the fact that you sat there, pushed it forward, and you're like, I didn't know it was going to look like this. I didn't know this is where we were going to get to. I hoped, right? You probably hoped, you dreamed, you knew you wanted the brand to grow, but you had to do every little thing along the way. That gets me excited. 'Cause just hearing that tone of how you approached it, I think is a huge lesson for anybody tackling a project or like a new business.
Yeah, I mean, I try to talk about it all the time. It's like they say that execution is the scene of the crime after you develop a 30-page business plan, right? And I always tell a team, you cannot decide winners and winning programs in a conference room. We don't decide it in a conference room. The market will decide it. Customers will decide it. So let's come up with 6 things, do all of them. They're like, well, how do we know which one's going to work? Well, we don't. But if we do it, then we'll know. A week later, we'll know.
Right, right.
So contain, try to keep it contained. Don't get too wild with it. But, I very much look at it like that. One of my favorite quotes is from Yvon Chouinard, founder of Patagonia, listening to his story. And he said, when he started, he just take a step forward, see how it feels. Take another step forward, see how it feels. Take a step forward, see how it feels. So people don't want to take the step forward because there's too many reasons not to. You guys sleep on it too long, you're just not going to. You have 3 reasons why it won't work today, and if you sleep on it, you'll have 10 more tomorrow. So that's why I love like what you guys done and just jumped in and done it. And that's kind of what it's been for Shady Rays. Like there's no ego then, middle of the road now. Like I'm just super curious about doing that next thing and just building it. And that's still how it is. It's still how it is. We're not this big company that we have it all figured out. We're still figuring it out because the market's dynamic and technology is dynamic and customers want different things. And so I just try to keep that mentality. And we want to do things strategically. We do things strategically, certainly, and we're doing more of that, especially with a larger team. But fast iteration and not getting too fancy. I think it's important now. It's especially
Hmm.
important in the early days. Not to get fancy. Don't build out your whole team. Don't build out this, that, and the other thing. Don't get an office before you need it. Like, keep it simple and focus on the things that move the needle.
So I want to go back to. I know I'm still in the spotlight, Hayden, but I'm super curious. So you were talking about the early days, and when you first started off, how you kind of saw an industry, you were interested in it, and you were like, oh, let me start investigating. How long how much time or how long did it take for you to feel like, okay, I really have something? Was it 6 months? Was it a year? Like I feel like that's always a good question to ask entrepreneurs because it varies. But like, when did you know? Okay, this is something that's got enough meat on it that I can run with.
It was a long time, I'll tell you that. First of all, in the early days, there's a lot of hurry up and wait, a lot of waiting for samples to be developed and shipped. And then you have small changes, and then you got another 60 days to wait on that. There's just a lot of things that do slow it down, at least in our case, and
Mm-hmm.
especially for a product company and probably all companies. And then figuring it out. I always tell people, I went into people say, Facebook ads, do they work? Do they not work? We're having trouble with it. I ran Facebook ads every single day for an entire year and lost money and did not gain a single trackable sale, not one. So we just kept hammering away at it. I talked about it started in 2012, right? That's when the company was formed. It was not until early 2017 when I said, I think I can quit my day job. And I think we can make this thing work. And at that point, we were doing pretty good volume year round, including in the winter, selling sunglasses. So I'm like, okay, we've got a pretty good base here. And I would say that's the moment. I would say it's 3, 4 years in my case to really feel like we've got the model down to a pretty good degree.
I know you got some stuff, Hayden.
No, I mean, that's fascinating. I'm smiling over here, listening to your story. That's super amazing and inspiring that you stuck with it. I mean, it sounds like, as you were just highlighting there, it wasn't a big success right off the bat. And, a lot of people these days, unfortunately, think that success comes overnight or pretty quickly. And part of that's just through social media these days. They only highlight the highlights. They don't show you, what the hell really goes on to get to that breaking point, or that inflection point is a better way of putting it. Um, One question I do have for you, and I think you've been hinting at this with your story around taking that next step, just pushing forward, executing, fail fast, learning, iterating, etc. How do you deal with moments of, well, I'm not entirely sure, or self doubt? Everyone deals with it. I don't care if you're the biggest CEO of a Fortune 10 company, everyone has those emotions. How does Chris handle that and push forward?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, so I would say I'll answer it in the early days and I'll answer it right now because very different
Mm-hmm.
scenarios. In the early days, I'll say this: it can get pretty dark because you're sacrificing personal relationships and pretty much all of your own personal time for something that is not only not winning but actively losing you money.
Yep.
So I'm like losing my life savings every day to not hang out with my friends, um, month after month, right? But for me at that time, it's more of a personal anecdote. Maybe it's broader. I don't know. But I had just kind of made this decision that I was going to be an entrepreneur,
Mm-hmm.
and that was going to be my life. So it was going to be Plan A and B, C, D, and F. And so at some point, this wasn't going to take off. It was going to be something else, but it was going to be something entrepreneurial, and that was just going to be the life I was going to lead. Right. So you can't you can't like put a time on it. If I would have made a time bound, like I'm gonna give the summer to see if thing's gonna take off.
It's gonna
We wouldn't be
fail.
talking
It's
right
gonna
now, and we would
fail.
not know each
It's
other.
gonna fail. It's gonna fail.
It's gonna fail. It's gonna fail, and it's like that's why most things fail. So same thing with a lot of things, right? Like you can apply it to fitness or anything else. Like if you just grind at it, eventually the scoreboard catches up with you. Um, Even if it's not there in the foreground. Today and in today's world, it's an interesting dynamic, right? Because we've got a full leadership team, we've got full departments of team members, and I'm making decisions that impact people's projects and a lot of investment and that kind of thing. Mostly it's just trying to use as many smart people as I can to be a sounding board and be partners in those decisions.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as much as you can just surround yourself with smart people and be humble and then inevitably make a call. That's what I'm trying to do. So like you mentioned, Cole, I'm very fast paced. In our early days, like I'm just boom, 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 boom. Okay, show me one thing. Here's the decision. Go next. And that was like a very, that was the scrappy model. But today I can't do that. It's not
Mm-hmm.
productive for me to do that, especially when other teams are leading things.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely find time to sit back, and I'm not confident about every decision. Um, so that's where we just got to go. We've got to go deeper. We got to do more
Well,
analysis and such.
well, I think that's a product of the environment, though, right? Like the first thing you're talking about. If I would have thought, hey, I'm only going to give this a certain amount of time, I could relate that to like when Hayden and I said we're going to do the podcast, right? How many millions and millions of people out there want to start a podcast, talk about entrepreneurship? I mean, right? If we had looked at that and been like, oh, well, we'll try it for 6 months and we'll do 30 episodes and see if it works. Like, I remember the conversation we had. We said, we're going to start. We're just not going to stop. We're just going to keep on producing, keep on creating content. We don't really know where it's going to go. We don't know what's going to happen, but we're going to keep pushing. And there's a beauty, right? Chris, you kind of hit on it. There's a beauty in not having an end timeline in mind. Sometimes there's a beauty in saying, hey, there are things in life you got to say, hey, I'll give it 2 years. If it doesn't work out in 2 years, I got to stop. But there's this like almost, for me, it's almost this humbling like realization that like just I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to stop moving forward. There's nothing that's going to stop me from moving forward, and I'm not going to quit on it, right? I'm not and for you it sounded like you're like, "Hey, I'm putting my flag in the sand. I'm going to be an entrepreneur, and I'm never going to stop chasing that." Right? I don't know where it's going to get. And that to me is just that's just super super cool. But I think like you said, coming back to your comments about early stages versus now, is like in the early stages you had to go 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 go, and you didn't have the team, and you couldn't sit and strategize because you had to build a foundation too, right? The more time you
Yeah.
spent not building the foundation, you weren't able to grow and get where you wanted to go. um, and I heard this comment the other day, which you were kind of hitting on. I was talking to an owner of a big retail company here in the Midwest, and a retail here. It's based out of Cincinnati, and they've got locations in Indiana and Michigan and all over Ohio and Kentucky. And he's like, you know what the hardest thing for me to grow? He's like, it's not money. He's like, I got money. He's like, it's not a business model. I know the business model. He said it's the people. Having the right people in place to not only make decisions and push things forward, but to also give me input and provide and because he's like, I'm by no means perfect. He's like, but the hardest thing for me, and so what you've done is you've put the right people in place to help you get to where you guys want to go. And yeah, sometimes that does slow things down, but that's not always a bad thing either.
Exactly.
I think you hit on a lot of great points there. I think one point that I want to just reemphasize to our listeners here, since there's a lot of young entrepreneurs that tune into our show, is you can't really time box, whatever startup or company you're looking to pursue. However, you need to continue to execute and push forward. That doesn't mean you continue to do the same damn thing every single day. And maybe it does, but like that's the definition of insanity. If you're going out there and you're tactically doing the same thing and you don't see a difference in results, well, how do you expect things to change? It sounds like through your journey and your story, you fine-tune things no matter where, if it was in your early days or what you're doing today. It's not the same thing that you did last week or last month. You're always looking to grow and figure out how do we optimize and get better, which is extremely important.
Yeah, it's a crucial point because you've got both. You've got the patience of you really don't know. There's a lot of external factors when it's hit, and we've talked about that already. But to your point, you've got to be going quick and going hard and getting it going because you got to gain some momentum. It's way too easy to lose the momentum, and so you've got to get moving and you got to keep it and keep grinding on it. Like I heard recently a quote that a lot of hard work happens under the surface. It doesn't reveal itself. It reveals itself later,
Uh-huh.
right? And so all of that is just bubbling under the surface, and that's kind of can be the hard part as well because you don't know exactly what it's all working towards. But if you do lean in on something and you drive it really hard, you work on all the creative ideas that you can, whether it's the idea you're working on or if it's another idea, success breeds success, experience breeds other opportunities. Like you'll hear a lot, like luck, happens through hard work, and hard work creates these serendipitous moments where you can kind of activate on. And so it's all just part of that process. That's for me why for me it was helpful just to like commit to that lifestyle, just commit to that's what's going to be. And but I will say, certainly, I'm glad you made that point because certainly it takes the you got to get up to speed and kind of get conditioned to just do all that work and then look at, like I said, I think it's looking at the scoreboard later. Like I'm checking sales every day, even back then, say 0, I'm still checking it. Like it's not like I'm not checking the numbers. The numbers, don't get me wrong,
Right.
but you can't like base your own self worth on that. That's kind of the kicker. The kicker.
You just made me
Absolutely.
think of a quote, the luck quote. I heard this. So, Chris, this was, I think, 10 years ago now. My first. So, I don't know if you know this about me, Chris. I'm going to share some personal information. So, I had my daughter when I was 19, my first daughter, 19 years old. She was a surprise, happy surprise, best surprise. I'm married to my now wife. We've been married for 8 years. Best thing that has ever happened to me. Nothing will ever compare. Having that first, because it obviously it changes the trajectory of my life, right? I kind of look at it as, I was like, if God was a practical joker, he'd say, I got you, like, figure it out, right? Like, here you go. Here, you don't take anything seriously enough. And so I kind of give you that background because I had to get into a profession quick. Right? I needed to make money. I had to support my wife and my daughter. So I got into sales. I was like, okay, like what can I get into? I started off in retail sales at 20 years old, selling on straight commission, and got pretty good at it. Started making good money, and then I wanted to move back to Cincinnati to start my own business. I came up with this. It was actually called the Parity Pool Monitor, and it was a device that would float in the water and test your pool for you, and then send you like, hey, here's what here's what the temperature is, here's where your chlorine's at, here's what you got to do. And it's because I was getting so many customers that were coming in testing their water, and they would never listen. So I'm like, oh, this would be great. So I moved. I was like, I told my wife, we got to move back down to Cincinnati. This is where my partners are at. This is where I've got resources. Move back down. And I built that, and and I can tell you, Chris, I'm not giving my whole backstory. I can give you more details of that at a later stage. I mean, I spent 3.5 years on that. Moving from that to aquaculture, unbelievable experience. And as I was building that company, I was working. So I took a job in IT and telecom. And I remember my first 4 months. I never sold any telecom. I never been in IT. I barely knew the basics. Immerse yourself, figure it out. I didn't make money. First 4 months, I sold a deal that was like $180,000, and the company I worked for at the time was like, you don't even know what you're doing. We've never seen this done before, right? And they were like, all these other salespeople are kind of like, oh, it's luck, it's luck, it's luck. And our sales manager said it's not luck. He's been here working after hours every single day. Where you guys all go home, he's prospecting. While you guys are all taking extra lunch and joking about the deals you closed, he's reading these manuals. He's figuring out, he's like, you guys call it luck. And he said, and this has stuck with me. I remember it like it was yesterday. He said, luck is when opportunity meets preparation. That means you've prepared so much and you've done so much work that it's really, you're not getting lucky. You've created your own luck. And it gives me chills just thinking that, because that changed. I was like, oh, now this makes sense to me, right? The harder I work, And the more I prepare, like the better things will go for me. And so it just made me think of that anecdotal story as you were telling that, because like that to me is like how I try to live my life.
That's an amazing story. It's an amazing story. So many parallels.
It's pretty
And
neat.
and also hard work's the only thing you can control. The main thing you have in your control, no matter where you come from, what your experience level is, what your age is, whatever it is, um,
It's
to start
effort.
that journey.
It's
So
your effort. It's your effort, right? So anyways, I wanted to kind of switch gears on you because we've kind of heard some of your background. I know we could go more into this, but one of the things I think is really neat that you've built into your culture at Shady Rays and clearly stems from your belief system as a human being is the social aspect, the giving back, the partnerships that you guys have with organizations that are helping to, I know like and I know there's some new ones going on, so I'm not going to name drop any specifically because I don't know if I'm totally up to speed on the changes. But overall, the social impact you guys have had and built into your company. Can you tell me a little bit about like how you did that and why that was so important? And if you've got any more news on who you guys are working with right now, I don't want to misspeak. So
yeah, I mean, it's always just been important to me to do business and have my work, my efforts have a higher purpose, and had the desire to give back, really throughout my life. But as I got into business, saw that as a big opportunity to do so. Kind of inspired by other companies that have done a lot of good. So in the early days, we were having conversations with early customers about causes they were passionate about, just different things. And food insecurity in America became something that really, really came to the surface. And we started a partnership with Feeding America back in the early days and donated a lot of meals over the first 10 years of the company. We've done 25 million meals. Every order has donated about 10 meals until we've launched our new impact program. And we built a phenomenal relationship with Feeding America, and we're able to just grow our efforts. Now we've launched Shady Rays Impact Program, which has the goal of broadening, still including Feeding America,
okay.
still fighting insecurity, and in addition to that, broaden our efforts to some other causes that our team is passionate about, and that we can raise awareness to our community and drive engagement with our community of customers on too.
Mm-hmm.
One of those organizations is the Rock Solid Foundation, incredible group of people. Their founder had pediatric cancer. They build play sets for pediatric oncology patients, and so we are building play sets through them. And our team has built one for a young child recently in the state of Kentucky. And then we also are giving ready bags to children who are diagnosed with cancer in the state of Kentucky. In addition to that, we work with an organization called First Ascents. They do outdoor adventure trips and experiences of a lifetime for people that are diagnosed with cancer or MS or other serious conditions. Our team is actually going on those trips with those particular people that are selected, and we're really, really, really excited to get closely integrated with that group. They are out of Colorado, but have trips all throughout Appalachia and the Rocky Mountains. We work with V Foundation. We work with Best Day Foundation in San Diego. We, of course, Feeding America still. We've picked up 4.5 million bottles out of the world's oceans through our sales in Australia. Breast cancer awareness, like we're just trying to.
Dude, you're making I mean, that's why you call it the impact fund, right? I mean, you're trying to make an impact. Like, that's incredible. That's incredible. I mean, like I said, I knew from talking with Lindsay about I was like, I wish I got the invite, Chris, by the way. Next place that you build. I'd love to do that. I mean, any
Oh,
opportunity. Yeah, I'm in. Count me in. Like that was, but that's just like such a cool way to give back. And also, me, as an entrepreneur at heart and like just, I mean, I'm very just love people and love doing things and moving. And it's just neat that you were able to take your dream of being an entrepreneur and marry that with like how do you not only like build a life that you want for yourself, but also like feed that into impacting others, right? Because I think a lot of the times people get stuck as like, oh, how can I help? Or what can I do? And it's like you kind of did both. Like that's kudos to you. That's phenomenal. And you're continuing to do it.
And you can do both. We didn't do it for a marketing benefit. We don't use it in our first touch ads or anything, but it can be both. That's why I think it's great when businesses can do it, because there is benefit and consumers appreciate it, people appreciate it in general, and it's amazing to be able to continue to increase our donations as we scale, and all of it. All boats rise in those cases.
So I want to not that this isn't super important, but one of the things I've always wanted to ask you about. This is the perfect opportunity. So just get prepared.
Oh boy.
Well, I'm super interested in it, and Hayden and I talk a lot about it. I mean, I'm from a marketing standpoint, Shady Rays. I feel like I see you guys everywhere. I mean, like I feel like when I'm talking about it, I'm gonna get texts from like, "Hey, have you like checked out our recent sale?" And I guess my question to you is, you know, how did you build this brand from a marketing standpoint? Like, what did it look like in the early days, and what are some tips you would give to new entrepreneurs or people in business that are trying to build out a marketing or media platform? Because from what I can tell, you guys, I mean, have a lot of the bases covered.
Yeah, we have a very complex program between all of our marketing and promotion, and many types of media, if you name it, we're on it. So that is true. um, it gets built over time. I would say advice for other entrepreneurs: it is key to know your unit economics, your margins, and kind of what you can afford and how you're going to measure each individual platform. So
Mm-hmm.
we measure a podcast ad very different than Google search ad, very
Mm-hmm.
different than national television commercial, very different than a billboard. So getting clear on that, and probably for a new entrepreneur, starting in those things that are more measurable, like the digital media channels. So where you can advertise on Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, a TikTok, a Google. That is, historically is a good place to start. There are other things just to kind of continue to layer on. Podcasting has been a really great one for us. Um, People tend to act on coupon codes from hosts and different things, and that is very measurable. So you can measure with coupon codes, you can measure with increases in website and search traffic incremental to the average. That's a little bit more directional. I've always liked, especially early days, things that are very specific to this code, to this podcast. Uh, and then over time, like where we are today, it's so broad, it's so complex. It's not any one
Mm-hmm.
thing that makes a meaningful difference. And
Uh-huh.
so it's a more holistic measurement of our customer acquisition costs based on our overall spend.
Okay. Okay.
Would you be willing to
But yeah,
would you be
yeah, go
willing
ahead.
to share one of your top locations that customers come in through, whether that's like Facebook ads, TikTok, podcast referrals, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, depending on the season, depending on the program, it's one of the social media channels, right? We're like, we're pretty fluid between Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, um, YouTube, and so that historically and continues to be a big focus. That has the best opportunities to retarget people, and has the best opportunities to pivot too. Those prices can be difficult. It can be really difficult. The prices can be high. It's an auction system, and so especially when budgets are tight, you got to be really careful with it. But I would say it kind of depends on if you're selling a consumer product or like a very defined service where you want to convert a certain amount of customers. There's that route, and then there's the route of we're going to build within a market. We're going to build community. We're going to be at events. We're going to kind of pick some overall local media options that kind of has a more holistic strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Less of a direct response, more of a longer tail, putting your foothold in a local market. But for us, it's always been going broad national,
Mm-hmm.
going broadly national with a key message, and the creative is the variable. The creative is the variable generally. it used to be that targeting was the variable way back, and there was a lot. There's right now that's kind of been broadened a little bit. So, but that's where a lot of our. But I would say we're probably less dependent on a Facebook than the average consumer brand, just because we are fairly broad in our scope.
Yep.
But those kind of places are a good place to start and learn it.
So I think you just segued perfectly into, because I know we're getting tight on time, and I wanted to talk retail. I wanted to get into Shady Rays entering the retail scene because that was a huge leap for you guys. I mean, obviously, like you've always been direct to consumer, right? E-commerce. You've never sold through any affiliates or any other places. It's always been direct. And I obviously have the pleasure of working with your team and executing in these retail stores. I mean, they're gorgeous. And so I guess my question to you is A, first, what why did you get into retail? What was the goal of opening Shady Rays retail stores? And then B, where do you see you guys going from here as far as I mean, are you seeing good traction and growth? Are you getting a lot of good feedback? I won't ask how far you're going to go with it, but I'm just curious, like why'd you get into it and how it's going and what you guys are seeing.
I think what's exciting about retail is that we can give people this living, breathing, full 360 Shady Rays experience, and an experience that we own and can we infuse our creativity into in an in-person format. And it's an incredibly native connection between our online customers and our in-store customers. You can buy online, you can return in store, vice versa, use the replacement program, one versus the other. And so it's a strategic brand building and brand penetration strategy in key markets.
Mm-hmm.
So it definitely is that is a big piece of it. I think a lot about like what is the best way for someone to experience Shady Rays the first time. There are lots of different ways people experience it the first time, different types of content, sitting on the couch for a commercial, see a product on Facebook, walk into a store.
Right.
Right up there at the top is walking into one of these beautiful stores and getting that full experience, being able to try all the products. They've been really really great to build credibility of the product, of course, drive sales. We are at right now close to having 5 total stores open
Mm-hmm.
nationwide. They are in a variety of cities of different sizes, different parts of the country, different weather patterns, different type of centers,
Mm-hmm.
different footprints. And I think that while we're seeing a lot of strong results, we still have a lot to learn in dialing in this model, how we build these stores and market, how we drive sales and merchandise the product, and inevitably then how we expand and what's the right way to do that.
Right.
So
Right.
that's the place we're at right now. We've done so much work, our team with you on building out these stores themselves. We'll get live. We're in the midst right now, as you know, of getting the last 2 live, and we're
Yep.
hot and heavy, and summer is approaching, and all of that, and really kind of focusing on that execution moment. It'll kind of be a reflection, get through this high time and execute as best we can, and then see how that continues. But we definitely love own stores
Mm-hmm.
as a brand strategy.
Well, I think one of the things I've seen, obviously from working so closely with your team on these, the pressure's on for these last two. I mean, we're racing to the finish line. But it was interesting that I had this conversation, Chris, with some of my team about we were talking about like how the stores you guys have opened and how they're doing, and I'm like, well, it's not just about what the store is selling. Obviously, you want your store to be selling a lot of merchandise, but you've built a brand that's very recognizable and so broad that it's also like the experience part of it. Like you can't necessarily probably quantify or put a dollar sign on what it means for John that lives out in Denver to walk into a Shady Ray store, try a pair of sunglasses or snow goggles on. You can't always give that a 1-to-1, right? Like, oh, well, we converted. Well, like yeah, maybe he didn't buy sunglasses that day, but now he feels more connected. So over the next 3 or 4 years, maybe he buys three, four, five, six pairs. Maybe he buys some merch, right? Maybe he's sharing it out with his friends and they're coming into the store. So that's what I think is beautiful and unique about your retail push is that yes, it is obviously number one. Let's sell merch. Let's sell sunglasses. But I feel like what you're saying right up there is the experiencing our brand in a physical place that we could interact. Because, a couple of years ago when COVID hit, everybody's like, retail's dead, right? Retail's not coming back. Well, I can tell you right now, after seeing the places where you guys are opening up stores, retail is not dead. And there is a very big push to have a great place to go and interact with a brand. And I just think the way what you guys have been doing and the way you've approached it, it's really unique and really cool to see.
Been exciting. It's been really exciting and pretty surreal to see the stores come to life.
Yeah, I mean, you can walk up and see it's your yeah, Shady Rays, it's your baby, right? It's like seeing your baby come to life. You're like, oh man, I get to walk in to like my store. Like that's cool. That's awesome.
Since we're coming up on time here real quick, I just want to try to throw out these last couple of questions that Cole and I typically ask every guest that comes on the show. And once again, thank you for the time. It's been very insightful. Really appreciate it. What advice would you give your younger self? And then what advice would you give to your future self?
Oh, gosh.
Ooh, that's a good one.
It's always a tough one.
Wow. Advice to my younger self off the top of my head. Maybe enjoy the ride a little bit more in those early years.
It's a good one.
You know, constant edge of your seat, right? Push forward. That's a good thing, but maybe not for your personal health.
Take some time to smell the roses. Yeah, right.
Yeah, I mean, people tell me that a lot. Take a moment, celebrate. Let's just move right on the next thing. Advice for my future self.
Might be the same one.
I would. Yeah, I know. That's what I'm tempted to say the same thing.
I was thinking for
um,
myself. I'm like, if you were pointing the question at me, like that's such a good one to use for future self too. I mean, right? Enjoy, like be present.
yeah, be present in the journey. The journey is new and different, still very exciting in different ways. Um, and I know that I'll look back on these times in the future and really think fondly of them, and so knowing that and being grateful for that, I think is something I try to should try to keep high awareness of.
Amen. Very cool to that.
Dude, awesome. Well, I mean, I could probably sit here, Chris. We could talk all day, but I know you got to roll. So, I mean, I just want to say thanks for coming on. This has been super insightful.
Head to shadyrays.com.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Go check out Shady Rays. Shady Rays everywhere. ShadyRays.com. Check them out. Shady Rays on Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat. I mean, their gear. I like I said, I'm not a big like brand loyal person. Like I really don't care until I find something I like. And I mean, the fact that I broke a couple of these and I just went online, typed in. To me, that's huge, right? Because I mean, these are the deep blues, which I know Color Rush is kind of what they're being rebranded as. I can put them on. I can't really see the screen right now, but they're my favorite sunglasses, favorite fishing. I will not go anywhere without them. I've got 3 other pairs at home, but I didn't know if I wanted to stack them all right here. But yeah, I mean, awesome product, and check them out. Yeah, check them out. Go get yourself a pair.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you having me on.
Thanks, Chris.
God bless. Thank you.
All right. See you all. Bye.
Bye.